My name's Chera and I work with Kemper House. We're an Alzheimer's and dementia care community in Highland Heights, and we have one in Strongsville. And we specialize in all levels of Alzheimer's and dementia. And Linda and I have worked together for about almost 18 years. So we like to include in our talk some very personal experiences and stories that we've had over the years regarding, the topic. And I think it helps people relate a little bit better to hear our stories. And we like to hear your stories as well. So if anyone wants to interject, we keep this very open and love to hear your stories. We learn from our participants over the years all the time. I was in the past, I do like community relations and education, but in the past I was an administrator for many years. Linda was our nursing director. We both ran our Mentor community for, oh my gosh, probably 12 years. Also been very involved. We don't have Mentor anymore. The only East Side location is Highland Heights, but we've been very involved over the years. So I'm gonna go on. I don't know why the pictures are so fuzzy when I blow it up like this. I apologize.
Well, as long as the writing.
Yeah, the writing's good.
You want to go back to the first slide? I want to give them a little history of this. When I was putting this program together several years ago, I was going to call it, why do they remember the question but not the answer? And someone said to me, no. Remember when you were a little girl and you were sitting in the back seat of the car on vacation, probably with a couple of siblings, and you kept asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? She said, I think that's what you should call this presentation. So if you'll go on to the next slide. I thought about it and I remember, you know what? My mom never said, no, we're not there yet. She was always very reassuring. It won't be long. We're almost there pretty soon. And then she'd redirect us. Let's sing a song. Or back then, as you're driving along, there were all kinds of billboards. And she said, let's go through the alphabet. First, you find an A, and then you go all the way through the alphabet to Z. My mom knew back then, and that was 50-some years ago, that reassurance was the most important thing. And that's what we were looking for. We weren't looking for, no, we're not there yet. And keep that in mind, that's what our loved ones are looking for when they ask these repetitive questions. They're looking for reassurance. You want to talk about the goals, Chera?
Yeah. Okay. So these are the goals that we're hoping to get across in this program. Just restate the possible causes of the repetitive behavior or questions. We want to talk about most frequently asked questions. And we always hear new stories. So that's when we love to hear your stories too. But we have plenty of our own stories, don't we, Linda?
I sure do.
Restating the most frequent behaviors and restating how to respond to repetitive questions and behaviors. I had a family member one time who came to me and was touring, looking to move their loved one into Kemper. And she's like, you know what? I thought I could do this for another 2 years. She goes, physically, they're able to go to the bathroom. She goes, the thing that's making me crazy is that he asked me the same question 200 times a day. And that was her breaking point. Everybody has a different breaking point, I think, of what they can handle. Sometimes it's like my mother-in-law, when she was taking care of my husband's grandma, she said, when she can't physically transfer from the wheelchair to the toilet, I can't physically do it. That would be her breaking point. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you know when it's time? And that's a different answer for everybody because everyone has their own thresholds. But these repetitive behaviors and questions can be someone's threshold because emotionally, just to hear the same thing over and over again can really, really put you in an emotional tailspin, set you off.
So it really is a request for information. That's why they, or reassurance, that's why they remember the question. And also they don't remember asking it. So what's more important to them is getting that reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And I can give you an example of that too. A lady came to my support group and she said, my husband has been asking me, is it Wednesday? For like the last couple of weeks, every day. It seems like a million times. She said, I was talking to my son one day and I told him this, and she said, it's driving me crazy. And that's what everybody says, it's driving me crazy. So the son came and spent the weekend, and he said, we're going to figure out what's so important about Wednesday. Well, guess what was so important about Wednesday? Well, Wednesday was the day he took the garbage out. This was one of the few tasks he was still able to perform successfully. He was so anxious about missing the day that he kept asking. So the son made a big sign for the kitchen, and it said, today is not Wednesday. But Wednesday mornings, the wife could come out and blank out the knot, and it said, today is Wednesday. Now he still asked the same question, but she had an alternative way of answering it. Why don't you go out and look at the sign that John made for you? So it wasn't quite as nerve-wracking as it had been before. And at least she knew now what was so important about Wednesday, which helped her be even more patient. So we always have to be a detective. You want to go to the next one? Remember, all behavior is a form of communication. They can't tell you they're having pain, so there's other forms of communicating to you, and it's in the behaviors that they have. We had a lady named Emma that lived with us, and she walked all day. She walked the halls constantly, and she would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. She always skipped the number 7, and we don't know why. But one morning, the caregiver came to the nurse and said, something's wrong with Emma. She's counting very, very fast. And Emma used to just count, slow, leisurely, and she didn't seem to be in any distress. But this particular morning, she did seem to be in distress. The nurse took vital signs and she examined Emma, and Emma didn't look really good and her vital signs weren't good. So she said, put her to bed and I'll call her husband. And Emma was do not resuscitate. He didn't want anything done. He just wanted her to be comfortable. And later that day, Emma passed away, and the physician thinks it was probably a heart attack. But that was Emma's way of saying, something's wrong. It was by counting very fast. So always keep that in mind.
Basically, we're looking for what is the repetitive question and what is it trying to communicate. It can be an insecurity or uncertainty, expression of concern, asking for help, trying to cope with frustration. Sometimes I've seen where they're trying to find the bathroom, but they don't know how to ask for it. So one thing that we do at Kemper House is we have pictures. When they lose the ability to read, sometimes they can still understand the picture. And outside our bathroom, we have a picture of a toilet. Or outside the dining room, we have pictures of like a plate with a fork and a knife, or a fork and a spoon or something. And we try to use cues like that, but we know, and we train our staff, like if they're having some kind of frustration, we want to ask, like, are you hungry? Do you have to go to the bathroom? We go have a whole list that we kind of go through to rule out that it, what need is not being met. They might have, anxiety and fear, trying to appear as if they're holding up their end of the conversation. This is something we see a lot. I've had families really frustrated because they go to the doctor's office or they go to a social event and the family all thinks, oh, they're not confused. They seem to do so well. Well, we see a lot of the times where they're able to just pull it off enough when they have to get by, where the doctor might not have even diagnosed them with dementia yet, but at home they're failing in so many ways. So we see that a lot too. which can be frustrating for the caregiver because, you know, you're not getting all the help and support that you need if your loved one's able to do that still. And then just wanting to connect with us. I think sometimes, like I said, just the loss of communication. I've had caregivers at our support group say that one thing that they miss when their loved one's diagnosed is they don't feel socially accepted in their social group. Even our founder, Betty Kemper, had mentioned that to me, that they have friends who they don't call them anymore. They don't invite them to dinner. I think there's a huge amount of the general population that just doesn't know how to act, and they're uncomfortable around someone with dementia. So unfortunately, you know, as you're going through this difficult time, you lose some of your support, you know, your friends, and they just, I don't know, it's a tough situation, you know. Do you have something you wanted to add to that, Linda?
I had an experience where I was sitting in the eye doctor's office one day, and across the room from me was a husband and wife. And they were just close enough that I could hear him. He would say to his wife, "Now, if I have to go to the bathroom, when I go out the door, which way do I turn?" And she'd go through the whole process. When you go out the door, you're going to turn right. And the first hallway you come to, you turn left, and the bathroom's right there.
Oh, God.
Nina, you're shaking your head. And he'd say, "Okay, less than a minute. If I have to go to the bathroom, which way do I turn?" Now they went through this maybe 4 or 5 times in a matter of half an hour. And she even brought out a little pad of paper and pencil, and she drew how to get out of and I wanted to go over to her so badly and say, "Reassure him, I'm going to go with you. I won't go inside, but when you come out of the bathroom, I'm going to be right there." And every time he asked you, "How do I get to the bathroom?" you're going to keep reassuring him. To this day, I wish I would have said that to her. So I see Lavina shaking her head like she really relates to this. You want to share it?
Well, I think that we tend to forget, you know, the state of mind that our loved one is in, and to have them, I mean, heck, half the time I can't process multi-stuff and stuff. So to expect someone who is compromised to be able to complete those many steps is just very unrealistic. So, you know.
Yeah. And because they forget, that's not reassuring them by giving them an answer. What he really needed was reassurance. And that's why they don't even remember your answer, because they're looking for reassurance. They're not really looking for the way to get to the bathroom.
You know, the other thing real quick, we have residents over the years who get very frustrated, like, "I need to go to work. How do I get up to the ports of Cleveland?" Or, you know, over and over again. So we will, little white lies, and we're probably going to get into this, and I'm probably jumping the gun, but we will say, "You know, it's Saturday, you don't have to work today," or, you know, things like that. Because, I mean, they ask 100 times a day, "How do you get to work?" So.
Yeah, we're going to talk about scenarios that we've seen often. But remember, they repeat themselves because they have dementia. It's the disease. It's like someone said, there might be that one person that has the disease, but the whole family has symptoms. And our symptoms are frustration and sadness and anger. And we're tired. So it affects everybody involved. Side effects of medication can cause them to be repetitive, boredom, problem solving. We're going to talk a little bit about routine. And that was another thing that families often have said to me. They'll say, "What am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to do next? Am I supposed to do something?" So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay,
So the
scheduled
first-
events are anxiety producing. So I'll start with this. I know, Linda, you're going to want to interject, but doctor's appointments, visitors coming, going to relatives or friends, going to daycare or respite, holiday events. People with dementia need a routine and consistency in their world. This is why we generally recommend that you don't tell them about this event until like the day of or the morning of, even if they're moving to Kemper House. If it's going to cause them anxiety and they're going to lose sleep for days knowing that this event is coming, we don't want to tell them about it. Even if it's something as simple as someone to come in to visit or a doctor's appointment, we don't want to cause them loss of sleep, anxiety over something so simple. So Linda, would you agree? We don't generally tell them.
We had a lady that she brought her husband for the first time to daycare, and she said, I was up all night. She said, I made the mistake of telling him last night, well, tomorrow you're going to daycare. She said he must have showered 4 or 5 times. He woke me up constantly. What time are we going? Where'd you say we were going? When are we going? The thought of having something out of the ordinary routine to do just caused him so much anxiety that he was up all night, and consequently she was too. So it's important not to give them too much notice. Someone's told me maybe 2 hours, just enough time to get ready to go, or get ready to have a visitor. Even a visitor from the church can be anxiety producing. Another thing that can produce anxiety, and I had a lady tell me this too, that her husband was very upset when the grandchildren visited because he didn't like sharing her with anybody. And the fact that she was giving the grandchildren the attention that he thought he should have, they started having the dad come to Kemper House for daycare at least once a week so she could have time with the grandchildren. So that's not unusual.
We've also seen too where grandkids can be overstimulating, or any kind of noise, or going to a holiday can be so overstimulating. We tried it one year with my husband's grandmother. We took her out of Kemper House and took her to Christmas, and that was way too much. It was way too long of a day. We should have limited it to just a few hours.
Did she get anxious?
She was just beat. I mean, we could barely get her back because she was so exhausted. It was just way too overstimulated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yeah, so here, frequent repetitive questions and behaviors. So these are probably some of the most common that we've heard. When are we going to eat? Where's my husband? What day is it? What are we doing today? Oh, the sounds and the noises and the humming type of things. Repeating.
Echolalia.
Yeah, well, I don't even know how to say that word, Linda.
Echolalia.
Counting, pacing, rechecking things. Are the doors locked? Yeah, we have had residents who go from door handle to door handle trying to open them. Pacing. You've talked about the lady who did the counting, but singing. When we had a lady who would always sing like the same couple songs.
Yeah. We had a lady that when she sundown, every evening she would ask where her husband was. Where's Woody? And we would tell her, he knows where you're at. He knows you're safe. And then we would redirect. We're going to have supper pretty soon. Would you fold these napkins for me? Or we would say something like, well, we haven't heard anything, so he must be fine. He'll be along soon. Little white lies are just fine. We're going to talk about little white lies when we do the ethics.
Yeah. And her husband was actually deceased, and we would never remind her again that he had passed away, because it would just be a traumatic event for her to relive.
Well, one of the other residents one evening said to her, "He's dead, stop asking."
Oh my gosh.
Was devastated. She was inconsolable. She started sobbing. "Don't you think I'd know that Woody was dead? Don't you think I would have remembered that he passed away? Did I go to the funeral?" It just caused such
Oh my God.
so it's very important that we try to redirect to get their mind off those things.
What do you do when they say, "What are we doing today?" That's the thing I've been getting practically every day.
Right.
What's a good answer for that?
Let me see. I think I have that here someplace.
You ever, maybe a schedule for the day could be up on the wall because your schedule's probably the same every day, you know?
Well, I think, everybody wants to feel important and needed. And it was always told to me that to give them little projects and every day have a list of projects, I find it easier for myself, like for women, to have them fold hand towels and face towels, set the table, sort the silverware. But if there are things that you think your husband might enjoy doing, have these projects for him to do every day. Do you have any other suggestions, Labina? Because I know you went through that with your mom.
A lot of the redirecting was the thing that helped me the most. With my mom, I came to learn that her biggest thing was the need for validation. So whatever I was dealing with her, whether it was, somebody stole my purse. Well, no, Mom, I put it away, even though I had no idea where it was. I put it away. I'll get it for you before I leave, but with her, I just needed to validate. So that's why I was thinking in terms of, your husband got all dressed up. Well, I got all dressed up. I'm ready to go somewhere. "Oh, I'm sorry, honey, the appointment got canceled." Just you're acknowledging the fact that he got dressed up and he's ready to go somewhere. And then, just redirecting him.
Okay, that's good.
That was very helpful with her. She would always become very frustrated because she didn't think people were listening to her. Nobody believed her, so with her, I just needed to do a lot of validation of how she was feeling. A lot of times they used to tell us with hospice too, is if you knew what the old profession was, and of course you'd know that if there was something that you could tie into something they used to do as part of their job, a tool belt, maybe a kid's tool belt, that they can fiddle around with, or someone sorting socks, just whatever, just something to tie into something that they used to do is sometimes good too.
We had an accountant who liked to have papers, and we gave him a little file. Had like some file folders and papers and like accounting type paper, ledgers, and he would spend hours just sorting and going through his papers and files and writing stuff. And we had a doctor, remember Linda, who we gave him a clipboard, and he would walk around and just look at patients and write down notes about each one, like he was doing rounds. We had a nurse who wanted to apply for a job. We let her fill out an application. Of course, she couldn't work there. But
I told her I needed a nurse for Thanksgiving Day. Is she willing? She said, "No, I don't work holidays anymore."
But we had her help pour the water cups for when people took their medicine. She was able to do that. Like, we just try to be creative and make them, so that they feel like they're able to help and have a meaningful, purposeful reason to get up every day. Like, if you can give them little jobs that they're still able to do. We had a maintenance guy, remember? He had a clipboard, and he wrote, walk around, and he would write down like where there was a mark on the wall or where a light bulb was burned out. And my God, if that maintenance guy didn't fix that, he was all over. But giving them simple little jobs that they're still able to do can really help with their downtime,
Like if you have silverware, maybe you could have him clean your silverware. That used to be my job when I was growing up.
Then they feel like they're contributing and still
Right.
able to help
They
you.
feel
People
valued.
they
Mhm.
really want to be of use and to be of value, like Lavina said. So, well,
Yeah.
you got some great ideas, but just try to keep him busy and maybe have an agenda for the day. It can be the same agenda as yesterday.
I mean, have a talk, say, what were your jobs? What was your favorite? Like sometimes you'll find things out about your loved one you don't even know, like I always like to ask the question, like, how old are you? And see like where they are, because sometimes it's 25 years old they think they are. So like you'll see like where they are in their regression of the disease progression too, like how much they've lost, where they are. Like they might be talking about home and it's home with mom and dad. So you
Exactly.
have to ask these questions you might not even ask on a regular basis. What is home? What does it look like? Who's there? And you might be very surprised by what they say. So,
Yeah, a lady told me in support group one time that she and her husband, that was his favorite thing to do, is go out to eat. So she tried to go out to eat, 2 or 3 times a week. And she said one evening we got home, and about half an hour later he says, "Well, what are you fixing for supper?" And she said, "I didn't say," she said, "because coming to the support groups, I knew what to say." She said, "I didn't say, well, we just ate at the restaurant, don't you remember?" Well, no, of course he doesn't remember. He has Alzheimer's disease or some type of dementia. And a lady at the support group said to her, "Then why do you even bother?" And she said, "The infinite worth of the moment
Thank you. I love that.
at the
and
restaurant.
that's in the
See
Kemper
him
mission
enjoy it
statement.
so much."
In our
So-
mission statement at Kemper House, it talks about the infinite worth of each moment. Like we've had staff over the years that I've interviewed and came to work for us, and they said, "Oh my gosh, where I worked before," like they would say, "Oh, we're not going to go on outings with our dementia folks because they're just going to forget that they even went in an hour." Like that's not how we look at things at Kemper House. It's as long as they're having a fun time in that moment, even if they forgot that they did it in an hour or two, what matters is that they were having a good time in that moment, and it's the infinite worth of each moment that has value. So we do all kinds of fun things, even if they're going to forget about it.
So what do you say when they say, when are we going to go to eat, when they just got back from the restaurant? What do you say?
Well, this lady told me, she said to her husband, "You know what? I'm not feeling so good tonight. Would you mind if I just made you a sandwich or maybe a dish of soup or something?"
Okay.
But she did offer him something.
Yeah.
And
okay.
then you get into this problem, not remembering that they ate, of them overeating and gaining weight. So that could become a problem too.
Yeah.
Or another problem would be that they don't feel hungry anymore. So these are all things that would need to be discussed with the physician, especially if they're gaining too much weight or they're losing weight. But, you want to go to the next slide, Chera? I put this picture of someone folding towels because how to address the repetition is to be patient. Easier said than done, right? We did some home care several years ago, and this gentleman was the son, and he was taking care of mom. And after breakfast every morning, mom would go into her room and empty all the drawers. And then she'd throw everything on the bed. And then she'd spend all morning sitting on the bed folding these clothes. It was driving him crazy. "I want you to come over, Linda, and observe this behavior and tell me what I can do." He said, "It's driving me crazy." So I went over, and sure enough, after breakfast, she went into her bedroom, which was right off the kitchen, and emptied every drawer, and I think the closet too, and just sat there all morning folding these clothes. So I went in the kitchen with him and I said, now think about what could she be doing now if she weren't doing that? He said, well, I know one thing, I wouldn't want her to go outside because if I take her with me to walk the dog, she won't come back into the house. I said, okay, so you could be chasing after her outside. I said, she could also be going through the things in your room instead of hers. So you're going to have to choose your battles. I think what she's doing is safe for her and everyone involved. It's meaningful to her, and she's doing something that she can be successful, and it keeps her busy. So I don't think this is such a big problem. And he said, well, looking at it that way, I guess the reason that I shouldn't have been so impatient and upset about it. I said, no, this is a good thing, actually.
It's like you can't always change their behavior, but you can change the way you react to the situation.
Right.
Sometimes that's the problem, is the way
Yeah.
that you're reacting. Okay. How to address repetition. Okay, so the 5 W's. Keeping a diary of the questions and behaviors.
What, where, when, why, who. These are things you can ask ask to try to assess behavior and what's happening, and deciding if it needs to be changed or not. Is this a problem for you, for them? Is it harmful? So this is one way of assessing the repetition. Certain repetitive behaviors do need to be reported to the physician, like the overeating or undereating. Accept the repetition as part of the disease. It is normal, and accept the behavior if it's not harmful. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean,
Does
no, I
anyone
think-
have any comments? You want to go to the
I
next?
think Labina is a perfect example of keeping a journal and all the info.
Oh, yeah.
So much detail. She had so much detail. She wrote a best-selling book from her journey.
It's the journal was what kept me sane, during the course of the journey, because there's so
Kept you
many
sane.
things. It kept me sane because there were so many things that occurred and so many things that I felt that I didn't feel safe discussing with anybody, because I was afraid that I would be judged, that people would think I was a horrible person for feeling some of the things that I felt or saying some of the things that I said. And it's like, I knew better, but because, I was dealing with my mom, the knowledge that I had just flew out the window. I was coming from a place of the heart instead of a place of the head. So the journal was very helpful. And, some of the things that I learned from you, Linda, during the many workshops that I attended, my favorite line, if it's not hurting you, them, or anyone else, don't sweat it, just let it go. That was my motto. I started living by that. And the other one that was very valuable for me that I learned from you was when you see a certain negative behavior or perceived negative behavior, what happened just before that behavior? Just a lot of those things. And because of, I think because of what you taught me and going through my experience, it's like that was the impetus for writing the book, because when you know better, you do better. And, it's like we just don't know, when we don't have you, Linda and Chera, living with us. There's a lot that we just don't know. And a lot of, I hate to say it, a lot of neurologists don't know, they may be a neurologist, but they may not have had experience with dementia. You know, it's like you go to medical school. If you're training to be a heart surgeon, you're not going to be able to treat my foot, you know, because you weren't trained in that area. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot.
They're good at diagnosing, but they're not good dealing with the behaviors.
No.
They don't know. In fact, I've had physicians and ministers ask me why it's okay to lie to someone with dementia.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to talk about that when we do the ethics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And real quick too, I wanted to add, Linda, over the years, we've had so many residents that we've used that same example, Labina, when we're admitting someone to the facility that had some terrible behavior where they were before, and nobody's going to take them, and they're at geropsych and the facility won't take them back. Linda taught me years ago what happened right before that bad behavior, that outburst. And I can tell you from experience, 9 times out of 10, it was how the facility, like their approach right before it. So we learned over the years, we would take these people who no one else would take, and we would have huge success with them because it was usually something that the caregivers at the other facility had done wrong that set them off. Like, for example, you know, they had this outburst and they started punching people, but 4 caregivers went in the room to change them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Or strangers taking my clothes off. You know?
like they felt like they were being attacked.
Yes.
We had a guy who I remember he had been kicked out of so many places, and we took him and he was fine. And his biggest crime was that he would wheel around in his wheelchair and steal all the ladies' wreaths off their doors. And what happened at the other facility is they confronted him and took all the wreaths from him. Well, why would you do that? We just let him steal the wreaths, take him to his door, his room. Like half an hour later, you forgot he even had him. We'd take him, put him back. You know what I'm saying? Like confronting him and taking those wreaths to him, he was being robbed. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's so much of their behavior has to do with the approach of the caregiver. And we have found that time and time again, and taken people that other facilities are like, oh my gosh, why are you, you know, how did you handle him? You know, we had a guy who was very combative with care and loved chocolate. So we'd show him a chocolate bar and say, if you let us give you a shower, we're going to give you this. I mean, you just have to think outside the box and get creative.
Yeah.
You can't, you know, confront them or put them in a situation where they feel like they're being attacked.
Right.
So I'll go to the next slide.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. This may be the 10th time or the 100th time that you're hearing the question, but it's the first time that they're asking it. And if you get all upset and anxious and whatever, that's inappropriate to them. I just asked you a question because it is the first time they're asking it. They don't remember that they've asked it before. And the anxiety for why they're even asking this question, you have to figure out what's causing it. Being reassuring is so important. I can't stress that enough. I'm gonna go to the next one. We're running out of time.
Oh.
Now, I don't totally agree with this. Answer the question exactly the same each time. It's just like the gentleman who wanted to know if it was Wednesday. It helped his wife to find another way of responding, and that was by putting up the sign. Her son put up the sign. So sometimes you do have to answer it differently. Don't discuss appointments until immediately before, at least 2 hours before. You can try index cards with dates and times. Dinners at 6 o'clock if you want to know when we're going to eat. Some people put the drive board up on the wall and have the answer to most of the questions. And like Chera said earlier, use pictures instead of words. Long after they've forgotten, they no longer recognize words, they still recognize pictures. You
So
want
I'll try to go
Shera?
quickly through this one because I know we're all running out of time, but I think a lot of the gist of this slide is, we tell our staff they can read your body language. Body language is, you have to, even if you're so frustrated, can't let it show because it's going to affect them and their behavior. And sometimes calm music, or we even have tried like aromatherapy. Those types of things can really help to calm people down as well. Okay, I'll go to the next one.
Okay.
Oh, I think we covered most of
What day it
it.
is. They're trying to put some order in their life. They don't remember, of course.
Mhm.
You tell them and they just don't understand. And each time they ask you, it's like the first time for them. So don't respond with frustration. It seems inappropriate. And there again, the body language is so important. 80% of communication, especially people with dementia, is a body language, your tone of voice, facial expressions.
Mhm.
If you're having a bad day, they're going to have a bad day. They do pick up on your mood. And so it's very important for you to set a good tone to make your day better too. You go to the next one.
Okay.
We talked about the count.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shera.
Yeah, I've seen the sticky notes too. We've had a lot of residents who are in the earlier stages and they're still using the sticky note to try to remind them. It's such a hard time, I think, in that early stage when they know that they're losing their memory and they're aware of it and they're trying to counteract it. So sticky notes, we see a lot of times folks in the early stage. The calendar and crossing off days, of course, sometimes works. Large clock, we have a lot of residents who have a really large clock that actually has a digital part of it that shows like the day, the date, the time. I'd say we have at least 5 or 10 residents who have that in their room. Sometimes that's helpful. We talked about the drive board.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go to the next slide.
And I don't agree with that. Respond exactly the same way all the time.
We talked a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Separating from a loved one, constant. Remember we had a lady who said she would be sitting on the couch at night with her husband and he was constantly staring at her. And that's what drove her crazy, is he had to be staring at her. And she had to be right by him. He had like separation anxiety if she wasn't near him. And so at one point she said it got so bad she would hold up a piece of paper. Like, remember?
Uh-huh.
Couldn't see her. Like, it was such a sad situation.
Well, and they lose the peripheral vision too. So if she's sitting on the couch next to him and he can't see her, then she doesn't exist. So instead of watching, she would say to him, Mike, watch TV with me. Look at the TV, don't look at me. And she would put a paper or a magazine up between them. And it was interesting because every once in a while she'd take the magazine down and look over and he'd be staring and he'd say, there you are. Sad.
Oh, so sad.
Sad, heartbreaking stories. Next slide. When are we going to eat? There again. If they, validate. They ask you, when are we going to eat? Say, you must be hungry. And like the lady that when they got home from eating at the restaurant, she did offer him a snack and she told him she wasn't feeling quite well that night and would it be all right? And
I can't see the top. It's covered by my.
or folding the same towel over and over like the lady.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Just emptied her drawers and folded everything. It's because it gives her something to do and she's successful.
I think we talked about, this is something that sometimes they're afraid to go to bed at night. We talked about this in one of our other discussions, just going around with them and checking the doors and windows so that they felt some reassurance or self-security that might help.
If they start doing that, what you want to do is do it with them. It might decrease the number of times that they do it.
And then just basically what works today might not work tomorrow. With this disease, the brain's being affected in different areas in different ways on a daily basis. And we sometimes have to reboot and try new things. So what works today may not work tomorrow.
In the Alzheimer's world, repetition is very normal.
Yeah.
Once you accept the new normal, you will become more understanding and hopefully less frustrated. Don't try to change them, just accept them. And you actually are the one that must change.
Yeah.
Must enter a brave new world, the Alzheimer's world. Most important acceptance is accepting that they cannot remember and they cannot change.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one good thing about dementia is they forget how nasty you were.
That's true.
And you kind of think how you feel if someone took away part of your brain or you couldn't remember even what day it was. To be insecure, anxious, and scared.
I'm gonna go here to, okay, I think we're
No,
just
that's
about
it.
at the end. I have this slide I wanted to put up. So this is my information. If you want to get in touch with me or Linda, I'd recommend emailing me. We also run a Zoom support group. Once COVID's over, hopefully we'll be live again. But the Zoom support group, if you want to be part of that, you don't have to have a loved one at Kemper House. We have a lot of the support group has loved ones in the community. I would recommend emailing me at the cinat@kemperhouse.com and tell me that you're interested in the support group, and I will add you to our lists that I email out with the Zoom link every other Tuesday at 2:30 is when we meet. The other thing I just want to point out, we do have Kemper Cognitive Wellness, which is a functional medicine practice, and they're very big on brain health and cognition. And a lot of our family members have come to us because they want to prevent or push back any cognitive decline. You know, maybe they're already seeing some cognitive fog, and they just want to live healthier, eat better, talk about supplements. What can they do to push a diagnosis back if, you know, a lot of the family has had it? So Kemper Cognitive Wellness, that kemperwellness.com, go to programs and you'll see all the free programs that we're offering via Zoom over the winter and into the spring. There's a lot of really good topics with our doctor. Dr. Nate Bergman is full-time with them. So I would recommend checking that out as well. And we appreciate your time today and look forward to, you know.
Don't forget that we have another program scheduled for April 19th, which is going to be on the ethics of dementia. It's a 2:00 program.
And that you would sign up right through the library as well with Mary.
You're welcome.